Head of Ericsson Industry Analyst Relations. It's good to see all of you here. And I mean, these 2 days we talked a lot about, society in transformation, business in transformation, but also the importance, of course, of the network and how it has to perform better and how the networks has to change and how it's better than Daniel Ehrenstrahle to actually talk about what Ericsson is doing in the network area. Daniel is Vice President and Head of Strategy and Portfolio Management at Ericsson Networks based out of Stockholm. I also want to introduce Håkan Servall. Håkan is heading up Vice President and heading up communication in this area in Northeast Asia. And Håkan might also join the discussion here this afternoon if you have questions and so on what's going on in the region. And we hope that this will be a very interactive session. So yes, ask your questions, have a dialogue and an interaction with us this afternoon. That's what we're hoping for. And after this we will go on and around 2:30, then we will have a break. And after the break, we have a 30 minutes break, then you can have your things in this room and have some refreshments. And then we will continue then with what we're doing with our consulting and system integration, business, verticals, and other things that I think will be very interesting. So I look forward for an interesting afternoon. Daniel, please.
Thank you. So I call my presentation Connecting the Dots in the Network Society. So I will talk about dots, and I'll talk a bit about the network society as well. I really want to make this session interactive, so please ask your questions as I go along, so to say. And please feel free to ask questions in all areas that you think are interesting. So I'm heading up strategy and portfolio management in networks, the networks part of Ericsson. So that's my specialty, talking about radio, IP and transport, and core data center network management. I can comment about managed services as well, but I think in the other session you might get more insights on those areas. A couple of things that I prepared for this discussion was 4 different things, and we can talk about other things as well. I think we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Give you a little bit my sense of what are the operator realities in the network societies, what's actually happening. And I'll probably repeat many of the trends and the words that we've used over the last couple of days. But I'll try to give my perspective on it. I should say about myself as well, prior to joining Ericsson about 2.5 years ago, I was a management consultant for many years, working directly with operators. So I have a lot of experience and insights about more the commercial side of the operators as well. And a lot of this, when we're talking about transformation, is how do you combine the technology and the commercials to create new business. We'll talk about the small cells market and how we as Ericsson feel that we are actually redefining that market. Hopefully we can get a dot into the room so you can see what it is, the thing that Ulf has been holding up a couple of times. We'll talk a little bit about network transformation, cloud, MFV, SDN, but I'll try to twist that more around what are the different types of data centers and opportunities. We can talk about the technology as well if you want to, but I'll try to make it more from an operator perspective and why do this transformation. I'll share some proof points about how is Ericsson doing globally when it comes to LT and other things, just to give you a sense for where we are. And I think we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So that's a little bit the plan, so please ask questions, let's get the discussion going. So talking a little bit about operator reality, so what are some of the things that operators are facing? And there's a lot of different things that operators are thinking about at the moment. I tried to sort them a little bit on more new types of business model, commercial models, and more the technology to support that. So as all operators, they are looking for profitable growth. Everyone is thinking about how can we get price premium, can we get consumers to pay more money for new types of services, how do they fit into the value chain. If you look at the whole value chain end-to-end, from vendors like Ericsson to the operators, to content providers, device manufacturers, different types of industry verticals, etc., etc. There's a lot of money in this value chain. And there's a lot of transformation happening, a lot of innovation happening. And operators are still trying to figure out what is their role. What is the role they should play to grow faster. A lot of thinking about over the top is that the threat is at an opportunity, and I think operators are coming around that it's here to stay, and they need to figure out how to create value from that. Superior performance, this is something I'll come back to in my presentation. You've heard us talk a lot about superior performance over the last couple of days. It's not just to sell more products. We actually fundamentally believe, and we see that operators who have superior performance typically make the most money in each market. So superior performance works. Operators are also thinking a lot about how do we roll out things much faster to customers, right? So going from this, we're launching a new price plan, it takes 9 months to update billing systems, to actually doing that in a matter of days or weeks. How do you differentiate when all operators are more or less offering the same thing, right? How? And then finally, what I'm very passionate about, the mobile enterprise. What does that mean? When the enterprise becomes fully mobile, you rip out the PBX, all the wires and LAN cabling and all of that, and you go fully mobile. So the combination of broadband, mobility, and cloud, basically. I think it's a huge opportunity for operators there. So that's more kind of the commercial side of things. And then what we bring to the table a lot as Ericsson is how do you leverage spectrum in the most efficient way. Right, so a lot of spectrum will be unlocked over the next 10 years. In many markets it will be maybe 3 times the amount of spectrum that exists today. But it's not going to be in an ordered fashion. It's going to be bits and pieces of spectrum all over the place. It's going to be different market by market. Operators and we really need to take care of all the available spectrum in the most efficient way, combining FDD and TDD and all of these different things. And there's going to be lots of areas that are needed in terms of radio product portfolio. So we are pretty comfortable with our position to serve this need that operators have. And we don't think there's anyone better than Ericsson to support operators with that. LTE and VoLTE. LTE actually happened a lot more quickly than we thought. We thought it would be a much slower growth of LTE, but it's happened very quickly. And now VoLTE is coming. It happened maybe a little bit more slowly than we thought. We see a lot of the smaller operators waiting for the big guys to move first and ride the ecosystem and all of these different things. But that's definitely happening now. And a lot of operators are realizing for VoLTE to work, voice over LTE, you need very good LTE coverage. So you need to come quite a bit in terms of LTE rollout. Small cells, I'll come back to that. Cloud and virtualization, lots of focus on automation and simplicity. So a lot of these technical terms that we are talking a lot about here, SDN, etc. In reality, it's about how do you automate, how do you create simplicity, how do you leverage all the assets you have. Unified end-to-end management. A lot of things are happening now, and I'll come back to that in terms of moving from nodes to systems. And there's a different need now how you manage that end-to-end. And then finally, security is also changing. It's going from securing the nodes you have in a network to securing securing end-to-end across a network. So lots of things happening as well. And I think for all the technology aspects here, it's very important that operators have a clear business case for why are they doing it. Because sometimes I think the industry gets into this, technology is looking for a business case. So there needs to be a very clear rationale for why we're doing this. And please stop me if I would become too technical, because I think in the room there are different levels of depth in terms of technology. I think you've seen variants of this slide. We believe that networks are transforming the new requirements on networks, both in terms of the devices and the use cases and the users using the networks, and then the different types of industries connecting to the networks. And we've talked about network slices and how can you, for the different types of services, create the quality of service that's needed for that specific application. So, talking about small cells now, we'll see if we can get a lot into the room, actually. So I think you've seen this slide a lot, but we keep hammering this type of message, right? When you ask customers what is most important for you, so this is Net Promoter Score, network performance and value for money, that's always the top two things that all customers answer. Everything else is secondary. So, is the network working? Am I getting good quality or not? And how much do I pay for it? What's the value for money that I get? And there's nothing that's going to change that. It's going to continue to be like that for a long time. What we're trying to do as Ericsson is to redefine a little bit how you talk about network performance. So I think app coverage we've mentioned several times, and it's an attempt to find a common way to talk about network performance and what's needed from network performance. So if you're very close to the base station, you'll have a higher speed if you get to the cell edge, and then typically when you're inside a building, you get problems. But we're trying to change that equation around and look at it from an app perspective. So different types of apps that users, both consumers and enterprise users, are using, have different needs, right? From a voice call to doing video telephony, etc. Very small font on this. We've done quite a bit of analysis recently to compare different big cities around the world and actually look at different types of speed measurements. Right, so here we have Seoul, Copenhagen, Tokyo, New York, and Sao Paulo. And comparing at what is the maximum speed that you get in this network when you do, I think it's based on speed test of the net. What is the average speed that you get? And what speed do you get 90% of the time? Because the speed that you get 90% of the time, that's the really important speed. And that determines, can I actually do it? Can I use a certain app all over the network 90% of the time or not? Or can I only use it when I'm in an ideal condition? So zooming in a little bit on them, the green ones, and looking at more cities. So this is the speed in these cities that you get 90% of the time. Right, so Copenhagen and Oslo, they get very good speeds 90% of the time. Right, over 1 megabit per second in those networks. And when you get to the more challenging cities, such as New York, Tokyo, etc., lots of high-rises, very dense population, you don't get the same speed. And then what we map in here, right, if you want to do video streaming, you need about 720 kilobit per second. Video telephony, music streaming, voice. So there's a lot of potential still to work on network performance in these markets. And when we analyze traffic around the world, we believe that 70% or more of all traffic is actually generated indoor. So that is one of the key problems for the industry to fix now. How do you get good coverage indoor so that you can get good app coverage, I should say, indoors? So we've talked a bit about the dot, and we've shown it, so I'll explain what it is and how it actually fits into the landscape. So what we've had now for a couple of years is many different companies offering pico types of small cells solutions and femto solutions, and we've had distributed antenna system for a long time, right? So this has been the standard for doing indoor connectivity, and then there's been lots of experimentation here and lots of products out there, none of which are yet really performing in the market. So when we thought about this, and we have our own pico products as well that we are continuously developing, but we don't believe in the femto technology. We think that coordination is essential, and I'll come back to that. So we asked ourselves the question, is there a segment in between these? Right, so the really big buildings with many different operators connecting to that building, and so to say the train station and those types of scenarios. What we said was that type of solution, it needs to actually fulfill many different requirements in order to succeed in the market. It needs to be cost-effective, more cost-effective than distributed antenna systems. It needs to be very easy to install, low total cost of ownership. It needs to have high capacity. It needs to have functional parity with the macro and fully coordinated with the macro network outside the building. It needs to be future-proof, easy to upgrade, etc., flexible. It needs to have a clear path into enterprise and cloud, and how can we add things to the building using cloud technology. And it needs to have an attractive design. So what we have launched now is the radio dot system. So we call it the dot, which actually doesn't mean anything for the first time in Ericsson. It's a dot, so we call it a dot. But then we call it radio dot system, and we're probably going to start calling it the RDS in true Ericsson fashion. But we are really proud of this. We think we're on to something here, and we get enormous customer feedback around this, and lots of ideas for how can this be used, how can you add cloud technology to it, what about the home market, etc., etc. Yeah.
I'm not sure what operators think, or even the enterprises that they serve. There's a Wi-Fi element to this that can be offered, so I'm not sure where this fits in the whole scheme of things.
Versus Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I mean, would you have it complementary, or would it be completely just,
yeah. No, so we will have Wi-Fi included in this as well, eventually. So initially when we launch it next year, second half of next year, it's going to be 3G and 4G, and then we're going to add Wi-Fi to it.
So it integrates.
Exactly, yeah. Any more questions?
The hotspot 2.0 concept, is that part of the design element as well, or is it something that's separate to this system?
What's the hotspot 2.0?
Wi-Fi roaming.
Okay.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi Alliance Hotspot 2.0 initiative, the Wireless Broadband Alliance, the interoperability, seamless roaming between macro and Wi-Fi networks.
So I'm not sure, I mean, is that part of the design element?
For Wi-Fi?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, we're fully into small cells integrated into the macro network and Wi-Fi integrated to the macro network.
And this morning, one of the speakers talked about it being an amplifier. I wasn't sure what that they meant by that term, and then
I think
separately, will it support multiple frequencies, and if so, how?
So this is what the full system looks like, right? So there is a So there is the antenna, which is the dot. That's the part you see. There's an indoor radio unit, and there is a digital unit. And a lot of this technology is carried over from the macro network. So it's proven technology, it's the same digital unit, it's the same software we have there. And it actually becomes part of the macro network. So it's not a separate network, and that's also what we mean when we say we redefine this market. We don't want a macro network and a small cell network, or many small. We want one network where everything is integrated.
I might be interdicting before you finish elucidating quite capabilities of the document. This is, am I understanding it correctly, this is your alternative to the FEM2?
No, it's a complement to the FEM2.
Okay.
And in our portfolio, I mean, we continue with the PICO solutions that we have.
Right.
So it doesn't replace what we are developing already. It adds something to the mix.
Sure. That whole FEM2 thing is very popular in Europe. A lot of vendors, some of the smaller players, the ones that are thinking ahead and being quite disruptive, like Free Mobile in France, for example. In their second generation of the free box, which comes with all the broadband subscriptions, they've got space for 2 FEM2s within, and there is no in the first version. This little FEM2 chip, whatever it was, I haven't physically seen one. It simply gets installed by the consumer.
Yeah.
Now it's already built in. But what Free Mobile, which now has about 3.5 million subscribers, it is creating something similar to the Spanish phone network, whereby they're just creating a Wi-Fi mesh overlay, which complements the mobile networks. And they're very confident that they can drag it out nationally, and it also complements what Orange is doing. They've got a similar system. So they obviously, I mean, they invested in this before your dot became marketed.
No, there is a lot of experimentation. The only thing I'm saying right now is that the FEM2 technology is not mature.
Okay, so can you elaborate on what you perceive to be the limitations of FEM2 as opposed to
so the main problem with FEM2 today is that you get poor drop rates as you move between. When you move out of the FEM2 space, you can get poor drop rates of 10–12% from that smart size. So the handovers between the FEM2 and the macro are very complicated. So that's just a quality of experience problem today.
Sure.
And FEM2s, in order for it to be effective, typically you need to have very dense FEM2s where you don't leave the FEM2 network. You stay inside, right, and you go between cells there. So there's a lot of questions that the industry hasn't solved yet around FEM2s.
Sure, and when you're out of FEM2 reach, you're supposed to be seamlessly handed over to every network. For free too, they're obviously thinking FEM2 because it's going to be linked to the fixed broadband backhaul is going to reduce the stress on its own mobile network. Okay, so you're saying FEM2 handover is...
No, so FEM2 handover is problematic today based on what we see. To get really efficient use of the limited amount of spectrum, it's a much more effective solution to combine the macro and the small cell. So you can do things like comp and those types of things, right? Use both the macro so it's more efficient use of spectrum. And then you might see all types of creative FEM2 networks, right, on specific slivers of the frequency bands that might not be effective to use for the cellular network, the normal network.
And your dot is multi-spectrum.
Yeah, so the way it works is Same type of setup as in the macro, same type of software, fiber to the radio unit, and then you will use a LAN cable. So what exists in the building, and it's powered over Ethernet, so there's no extra type of powering that needs to happen. And then the frequency dependency is all in the antenna. So you can change the antenna in the dot. I think Ulf separated it today. So that's where we do the frequency matching, so to say.
That it looks like a bit of a DAS network, but it's really not a DAS network.
No, I mean, it has similarities in terms of thinking. But I think what we cracked here is fully integrated into the macro and ability to use LAN cabling.
And that's not multi-carrier, single carrier.
Initially it will be single carrier, but then we'll see, can we actually fix the multi-carrier problem as well.